I now call upon Dr. Christian Busch, LSE alumnus. Dr. Busch is a graduate in management who has used his passion for enabling aspiring innovators to set up a global community active in 20 countries, Sandbox, now called 1000 Network, and has become a thought leader on impact entrepreneurship here at the LSE's Innovation Laboratory.
Well, thank you, Director, Honorary Chairman, esteemed faculty. I hope the baby was crying out of excitement, not out of fear, but let's see how that goes. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. A real honor to see all this excitement and passion. It's such a great achievement. You indeed just graduated from the university that just recently again came #1 in social sciences and management. So indeed no pressure there in terms of now showing that you can live up to that. But you're now part of an incredibly interesting and pretty peculiar set of alumni. So they range from Nobel Prize winners to presidents to CEOs. Even Josiah Bartlett in West Wing is one. And of course, Andrew B's son, Bond, James Bond. And I still vividly remember actually the time here. So I used to be in the first cohort of the Management Organizations and Governance. We just saw graduating, which was a very vivid memory, a fantastic group, fantastic program. I also still remember that given that it was always impossible in London to get good food with our student budgets, the kind of McKinsey and other companies' recruitment events were usually where the good food was. So that was always very vivid, but since then the LSE has remained a very big, important part in my life. You will see that wherever you travel now in the world, you have well-meaning people who somehow can support you, who are somehow there, and who usually do exciting things, or at least are pretty good now at pretending to do exciting things. And the interesting thing is that the LSE name will not open you a lot of different doors around the world. Some of them you might want to open, some of them you not want to open, but the interesting thing is that during the last years, I've had the pleasure to travel a bit and meet quite a few interesting people from corporates and other areas. And the interesting thing I felt emerging, both with LSE alumni but also with the current cohort, is that there seems to be this Generation Y question mark emerging. So not the age group 20 to 30-year-olds, but a mindset. The mindset of people who question things, the mindset of people who want to put meaning to things, and the mindset of people who want to get away from the old models, a lot of them are still based on this very old Maslow hierarchy of needs. You probably all came across it, like you first fulfill material needs, then safety needs, then emotional needs, and if you still have time one day, then you self-actualize yourself. So wonderful people like Bill Gates would follow this, first set up Microsoft, make a lot of money, set up a foundation, and give it all back. First do well, then do good. The wonderful thing about this Generation Y question mark is that they want to do well and good at the same time already. And they also want to do that now. And so what I feel is the interesting thing now being this enlightened circle of needs, where we move away from this kind of linear approach to a more circular approach, where we see that it is a relational approach. It's our enlightened self-interest to be not too self-interested, because in the knowledge economy, it all depends on how much we can give in order to get. And so the interesting thing is that we see more and more companies following this idea, and I do hope that some of you will join some of these emerging purpose-driven companies, being that Kickstarter, Patagonia, or go into existing companies and work with them around, trying to bring purpose into these organizations. What you will see is that organizations more and more see that also as a way to gain customers. And there's 60 trillion in assets that will come from the baby boomers to the millennial generation in the next decades. And a lot of that money will flow into social impact projects. So I think there's a lot of scope there to actually have an impact already right now. And the interesting thing is that, in a way, comes back to the kind of old Adam Smith type ideas, because I think we tend to focus a lot on the kind of wealth of nations and, financial benefit, invisible hands. But what we sometimes neglect is the other book he wrote, which was about moral sentiments, and which was about the idea that it is in our enlightened self-interest to cater to society, not only to make us feel better in the long run, but also to actually nowadays get things done in a way that we live in a stable society. And so with the tools, technology, and this Generation Y at your disposal, you now have the opportunity to be at the forefront of this kind of enlightened self-interest type model of capitalism. and to work with these interesting companies. And so I think Margaret Mead has never been truer than today with her words that you should never doubt that a small group of citizens that are thoughtful can change the world, because indeed it's the only thing that ever has. And you can see that in the history of the LSE, how a lot of people, usually very few people, come together and make very interesting change happen, where usually people used to say it's not possible. And so the major reason I feel that there's this urgency to already now think about purpose, think about meaning, rather than postponing that, is that life can be very short. Around 12 years ago, with over 70 kilometers per hour, I crashed into 4 parking cars. All cars completely smashed, including my own then. And I will never forget this guy running to the scene. And he looked at me and he was like, oh wow, he's still alive. And so I thought, wow, okay. So I supposedly should have been dead. And so the days afterwards, I was wondering about all these questions, you know. If I would have died, who would have come to my funeral? And who would have actually cared? And I never, believed in all these near-death experience things and so and so. But when you see your life in kind of split seconds in front of your eyes, you actually get closer to that idea that it can be over every day. So the interesting thing that is then to say, well, the one thing I had realized then is that I neglected all these things that I then deemed important. Deep and lasting relationships, doing something that I would be proud of, that is relevant, and living a meaningful life. And the interesting thing is, over the last kind of 12 years then of soul searching, I've met more and more people who survived cancer, people who faced real crises, who lost their dear ones. And the interesting thing is that once the smoke of peer pressure is gone, people develop an understanding of what is really important to them. And a lot of times it gets actually into the idea of finding something that is really meaningful. And so building on the tradition of having some kind of clear learnings for you to go away from, I have 4 that I find particularly important. The first one is around be a good friend and choose your friends wisely. I think particularly in moments of crisis, whenever bad things hit the fan, as they will sooner or later, you will see who your real friends are. Second, protect your integrity, even if it doesn't always come cheap. For your internal well-being, of course, but also in Warren Buffett's words, it takes years to build a reputation, it only takes seconds to destroy it. Third, don't worry too much. The LSE, your LSE-trained minds will make you think critically through all different scenarios, all things that can potentially go wrong. But actually, what usually things work out in the end. And if they don't, a lot of times it's not yet the end. So one of the many English phrases that I learned from my brilliant girlfriend is that you can only cross the bridge when you get there. And those of you who had to face the demands of LSE, the 20 papers per week, you will know what I mean in terms of, once you get there, you see that you can actually do it. The fourth is stay optimistic even when you're surrounded by cynics. Viktor Frankl, the psychoanalyst in Vienna, he survived the Holocaust. And he always wondered, why did I, Viktor, survive the Holocaust, even though all the others that were with me died and we had exactly the same conditions? And so he took flying lessons. And the flight instructor told him, look, Viktor, if you want to fly like this, you have to start like this, because the wind will pull you down. So if you start as a realist, you end up as a depressionist. But if you start as an optimist, you end up as the real realist. And so the interesting thing is that what you will see, that, by the way, it's good to have this kind of long, good distance to you guys. I was recently told I have this erratic hand movement, so I usually kind of endanger people. So I was asked to not move too much with the hands. So you're safe, no worries. But in any case, I'm German, so I have to close on a very philosophical note. I can't stay in the practicalities of life. And so in Heidelberg, where I'm from, we have this philosopher's way. And Goethe was writing his beautiful poems there. And he had something which resonated with me a lot during the last years, which is that if you take man as he is, or adapted for nowadays use, if you take woman as she is, if you take man as he is, you make him worse. But if you take man as what he could be, you make him capable of becoming what he can be. And I do believe that this is one of the most important responsibilities for us as future leaders, to develop organizations that enable people to see who they can really become, and then get them the tools to actually get there. And in the process, I think this will also help us to develop a deeper purpose in our own endeavors. And so having said all this, I'm very well aware that I'm one of the very few things that's between you and a well-deserved drink and maybe throwing another round of hats. So congratulations again. We have no doubt that you'll go out there and become who you're truly capable of becoming, and the LSE and its alumni will be right by your side. Thank you.
Dr. Busch, thank you very much. I now call upon all the graduands to rise for the official conferment of their degrees.
Well, this is it. The moment we've all been waiting for. It's been an honor for all of us to have you as LSE students and to be able to see you graduate today.